our current six attendees. And I'll just keep admitting people as they come in, but we're going to start with introductions and then kind of popcorn it around to all of you. Thank you so much again for being here with us. All right, I'm letting everyone in. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here.
Thank you everyone for joining. We're just going to slowly admit people, but probably it would be nice to get started with introductions. So I'm Sarah Khan. I'm a PGY5 GI Fellow at Mayo, and I am co-leading LFN this year with Sarah Utal. Um,
Hey,
sh-
everyone. I'm Sarah. Thanks again for joining. I am PGY 8 at the University of Michigan in my transplant hepatology year. Um, and we've got some awesome speakers here today. I'm going to call on Dr. Shaw to start us off with intros.
Yeah. Hey, thanks guys for having me on. I'm Neil Shaw. I'm a transplant hepatologist at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and I am the current transplant hepatology program fellowship director. Previous was the associate GI program GI program director. So excited to be here. Thanks for having me, and looking forward to the conversation. I'm going to pass the baton.
that
Yes.
would be great.
Dr. Lucero, go for it.
Hi, good evening. I'm Catherine Lucero. I'm PGY 18. I've been a transplant hepatologist for 10 years. And I've been the program director of the Hep Fellowship for 3.5. So thank you for having me and looking forward to a fun discussion. Manur, you're next to me on the screen.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Mahnur Haider. I'm currently in my third year of GI fellowship at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston. And prior to this, I did a year of transplant hepatology at Cleveland Clinic. Bilal, you can go next.
Thanks, Manor. I think I'm the last man standing. Hi, everyone. I'm Bilal Khalid, one of the transplant hepatologists at Johns Hopkins. I guess I'm PGY 8. I graduated Hepatology Fellowship just this past year, and very excited to be here. Thank you for having me. I also am the faculty lead for Back to Basics with LFN.
Awesome. And like Sarah just put, feel free. The chat is open. It's coming to us. So please put your questions in. We're going to start off with some of your questions that I think many of you had that were representative just to get the thoughts from most of our panelists. Again, feel free to popcorn it. This is casual. So first off, I think a big question many people have is what are your thoughts on the 3-year pilot versus 4-year tracks? I see some big smiles. Dr. Lucero, do you want to start that off?
I think this could take up the whole hour. It really depends on what your dream job is, what your career path is. Are you going to develop a niche? Do you need an additional year to help develop that niche? Are you getting a master's? If yes to any of the above, I would say do the 4th year. If you want to be mainly clinical and or you created your niche and your research foundation and that's already set, you don't have to do a master's during your fellowship, then you could try to pack it all into 3. So it really depends on what you have, what your goals are, because after you finish fellowship, you really want to have the best package to get you the best job. So it depends on what kind of job you're looking for. So in short, if you're more clinically heavy, I think you could do it in 3. But if you're looking to create that niche and you want to ask for protected time and you need another year to get all that ready, then I would do the 4th year. And I would say most of our fellows do a 4th year.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, in my role as a former associate PD for the GI Fellowship, I think one of the things that the 3-year fellows struggle with is that you have less time to complete your GI Fellowship, and so if you feel in any way uncomfortable with your endoscopy skills or your general GI skills, right? I mean, that 3rd year for transplant is truly a transplant year, and yeah, you can make up some time for endoscopy and things like that, but just historically, we've had, some issues with that in that third year combined fellowship where you're having to really try and catch people up on their other requirements. Things like capsules and pegs and all that kind of stuff. They'll sneak up on you, right? And they'll really interrupt your transplant year. So just kind of keeping that stuff in mind as well.
Thank you so much, both of you, for your insights on that. I think naturally that kind of transitions us into the question about an additional year of fellowship, whether that's before GI or after GI. I guess a lot of our applicants this year were wondering about what your thoughts are for hepatology training prior to GI fellowship, or even as a solo fellowship without the combination of GI. I think a lot of people are thinking about whether they want to apply this year. And so if you have any comments on that, it would be highly valued, I think.
Neil, you're unmuted, so you can go first.
I'm constantly unmuted. And so, I mean, it kind of depends a little bit to what you said, right, Catherine, about like what are your goals? The hepatology, the non, I guess we're referring to the non-ACGME accredited hepatology fellowship, right? Not necessarily like a transplant year, although you'll learn transplant in that. We don't have one here at UNC, but just hearing about it, yes, you'll get basically immersed in hepatology. And if you do want to go into more of maybe a community feel practice where you can really be that person in the community for hepatology. I think it's a really nice way to do that if that's what your career goals are. With respect to it helping you or hindering you from transplant hep fellowship on the ACGME side of things, I don't necessarily, for me personally, I don't think it's a red flag or anything like that. If anything, if that person just comes in with more hepatology knowledge and can maybe actually focus on like transplant, right? Which I think in itself is a really big curriculum. There's just so much you can learn about how transplant is performed, the policies, which are ever so changing, and just being immersed in that world. I think it can free you up for that a little bit, actually.
Yeah, so we have three spots. So in the past 5 years, we have had fellows go through the non-traditional route. So we have had PGY fours enter who did one who decided latent GI, another and two who didn't match. And so they're treated the same way. And in years past, we have been able to get those fellows board certified. There's always conversation that we is discussed at the annual meeting if that's going to change. But as of right now, the fellows can get board certified. I would say I think the field of hepatology, there's a definite need. So if one wants to pursue a solo year and practice outpatient hepatology, I think there's a need for that. But they're yet to be board certified. I think that's coming down the pipeline.
Mhm.
But as Neil said, if specifically if there's it out more in the suburban, rural, not the major cities, I think there's definitely a need for those hepatologists who don't necessarily have to do endoscopy.
As a follow-up to that, for mentioning the fellows who kind of came through your program who perhaps didn't match GI, I think we've gotten some curiosity about pursuing the Hepatology Fellowship as a means of building up GI application. And people are curious to hear what your experience may have been with that. I also know that, Mahnur actually went through a track of doing hepatology prior to GI fellowship. So any thoughts on that?
Sure. So I did I did hepatology to help me get into GI fellowship, and it did help. I did really value my year because it's been a kind of a winding journey for me, but I was hoping the program I would match into would have a transplant hepatology. It would have transplant hepatology, which it did, but it closed right after I matched. And then kind of their department also kind of dissolved. And so my hepatology knowledge really, really helped me a lot. And it's something I still want to do afterwards. It's been confusing as to if I would be board eligible. And I did email ABIM twice about this, and the rules were that you have to have done the year after GI. So I think that if someone's really interested in hepatology, I mean, obviously doing it after GI would make the best sense. But I think regardless, it did help me. And if you end up going to a program that does not have strong hepatology, the year definitely is very, very useful because I think even as a general GI doctor, you see a lot of patients with liver-related problems.
Yeah,
I
based on what
experience. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, doctor.
um based on what I've heard from other program directors, if you do the fellowship at an ACGME accredited hepatology fellowship program, you're more likely to get it approved. So I would say if you're interested in doing the fellowship, I think so. The compromise is, would you, one, be willing to do it in the third year as a pilot if you do it the year before? That's a compromise that some have done. But I just spoke with somebody at Yale, like they got their fellow through. So I don't think it's going to be an issue. Maybe Sarah, in your case, if the program dissolved, then that would not carry as strong if you had trained it if the program had stayed active, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I also wanted to bring up that I have come across a couple of hepatologists who've only done just hepatology in practice in the community. I think someone just joined UTMB as well, and I think a lot of people need hepatologists. So I think it's working well for her.
I mean, there are definitely more patients with liver disease than hepatologists around. I mean, as someone who's newest faculty, I can tell you my wait list has grown from, just starting out to like 3 months already, which is really unfortunate. And there is a big need for that, especially in the community. I think the only thing that you're limited by not having a transplant hepatology board certification is like you can't work at a transplant center facilitating transplant, being part of the liver transplant committee, which your mileage may vary if that is something that an applicant or a fellow would want or not. One of my former co-fellows in GI fellowship, since I did an NIH track at the University of Maryland, we didn't have transplant hepatology specifically in that track, and she had done a hepatology fellowship, general hepatology fellowship before doing GI. It helped her a ton with GI knowledge. She's a fantastic fellow and now when attending, but she did not want to do transplant hepatology as a career. And she's quite happy in her practice right now, having general hepatology inform what she does in her GI practice as well. So I think, like everybody is saying, it's really, really important to know exactly what you want. If you want those critical transplant patients pre, post, intra, some people don't want and don't need that. And that will kind of inform how much time you want to invest into this as a career or not, and take quite an expensive board certification, which I just paid $2,995 for.
Is it still the second most expensive one?
I think it is the second most, if not the most. I think electrophysiology might be,
I think
if not the same.
one of the cardiology ones beats it out. So.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's a huge kind of region of questions that we got, was about community practice and potentially doing that year before. So if there are more questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we can circle back later. But for now, we're going to just veer a little bit into what's maybe on some of your minds is the application cycle.
Hmm.
And so thinking through evaluating programs, I know a lot of people use websites. But how else can you tell a program's strengths, and how is it best to evaluate a program that you're thinking about applying to?
I can talk a little about it because I went through the similar process 3 years ago. I was looking through my emails because I did a +1. So after doing GI fellowship, I did my transplant hepatology here at Mayo, so a different place. And the match was quite new at that time. The website I looked through tonight, it's pretty well delineated, the ASLD app, and you can look through each program and you can see how many spots they have available, and they will direct you to program websites. But the issue then, and even now, is a lot of program websites are not updated, which is difficult. So I relied heavily on social media, Twitter/X, and any of a similar medium. X is easier. You can find a lot of fellows there who are currently there as transplant hepatology fellows or GI fellows, and connect with them directly and reach out. A second thing was ASLD or similar meetings where you can actually meet with fellows who are currently in the program who can connect you with a transplant hepatology fellow and see how things are going. And thirdly, it was just reaching out to your own social network. You'll be surprised 6 degrees of separation will get you anywhere. I shook hands with President Obama back in college, even though I'm not related to him whatsoever. 6 degrees separation will get you to so many places. So you should be able to find someone, and I am more than happy, and I'm sure Sarah and Sarah will share our contact information if you ever have any questions or you want to reach out to someone that you think might be in touch with any of us. LinkedIn is another old-fashioned way. A lot of us keep our resumes fresh there. So basically, it's a lot of hard work. I paid extra to apply to multiple programs because I wasn't sure exactly where I wanted to go, and I wanted to really explore what the offerings were. That +1 year was going to be very important for my career, and I wanted to make sure I invest that time and do a good job at it. So for me, this was really a way to interview programs, and also before interviewing programs, hopefully reach out to fellows and see how their experiences are. That was very, very helpful for me. I'm happy to talk about it more, but I want to give my co-panelists a chance to discuss if they have any thoughts about it.
I mean, Bilal, exactly what you said. As you were talking about that, I just think about the Liver Fellow Network and what it does and what it represents, right? I mean, this is proof of it. Like people who are going through the process, been through it, now they're on the other side as faculty and sharing their experiences. You're in this network already, right? Like you can hopefully access some of your peers and talk to them. But you're absolutely right about even just being able to just reach out to your mentors or colleagues and figure out who they know and get connected. We're a pretty small community, and I would say the majority of us are pretty easy to approach. We're not really mean, so feel free to talk to us, and we will open up a better program and tell you the ins and outs, things that you don't get on that website.
Yeah, the fellows are the key. I've sold my spiel to many candidates, but I'm like, this is my spiel, but you should really just talk to them. Fellows, for the most part, love talking about their experiences. And so that's really the key. And I asked the fellows in our recruitment, we have an hour that they spend with them, just closed door. I think that's like most GI fellowship recruitment. You have closed door communication. So I think everybody's pretty much an open book about it. And it's a plug to try to make our websites better because that's how we're judged. But
Mhm.
I learned a tip now about social media. So I think I need to
Yeah, same here.
promote more.
Taking notes.
It's okay. I don't think Sarah, I'm still on Mayo's website. It's fine. It's old news. But the other things are, I mean, people will also find different ways to compare programs. So because I have a lot of fellows who've talked to me about this at conferences, like whether there is call or not, night call, weekend call, whether you're allowed to scope or not, or whether you have enough opportunities. As someone who trained in a hepatology program where we didn't have dedicated time for endoscopy, although we could if in our elective time, I'm doing perfectly fine, scoping 2 days a week, in my outpatient blocks currently as a faculty. So, and call is not a big deal. I interviewed at many programs. Most programs don't have weekend or night call, but I ended up training in a program where there is weekend and night call, and we were a primary team. So for me, it was really important to be trained rigorously and learn the internal medicine of it, which, we tend to kind of put on the wayside when we're in GI, and we really learn how to be a primary team. And currently, in my position as faculty, I'm the inpatient attending on a primary team service and extremely internal medicine heavy. And residents talk to me all the time. It's like, how do you remember Delta Delta from residency? And it's like, well, I just refreshed my memory last year in training. So, and also thinking about whether you want to move or not if you're applying for a +1 program, right, through the ASLD app. I had to, with my kids and my wife, we moved from Maryland to Minnesota for that 1 year. But for me, that was meaningful and important, and I wanted to do it. And I had an understanding family and everybody who supported me to make that happen. A lot of people are not in that position, and that can be challenging as well. So really, really ask those questions when you're going through a process like this, because you're applying a year and a half before you're going to be starting as a hepatology fellow, which you have to kind of gauge how things are going to be in 2 years personally and professionally as well, which is difficult.
Yeah, if I could add on to that, that's where the dream job I think is a very important statement because you want to work backwards. Um, and and so you have to find the program that will get you to your dream job that will give you they'll give you an edge. And so to emphasize Bilal's experience, we're very clinically rigorous, and we don't sell ourselves as such. Endoscopy, I'm glad you said that because that's a big question from fellows. Like, will I maintain my scope skill? I mean, I feel that most fellowships, you're scoping at least 1,000 patients upper and lower. So you don't forget your muscles will never forget that. And so I don't think that should be a fear, but everybody has to process it. But I can guarantee you're not going to forget how to scope. And so it really depends on where I think you should think about where your dream job is, and even when you're at the meetings, kind of seeing what the attending's day to day is, because some are very clinically post-transplant heavy, some don't get post-transplant exposure till a year after. So you want to decide how much exposure do you want, or do you want more outpatient endoscopy because that's more of your thing? Every program is different. And so you have to kind of give your like top three things, which are your non-negotiables, and location can be in your top three. So I think going in as much as you can, think about what is most important to you, and it will make the decision much easier because they'll all blur together. You'll get great training, but it's kind of the nuanced things of what you want to boost your chances of getting the best job that you want is key.
I totally agree with all of the sentiments expressed. I completely second also that fellows love to talk, and we made a whole webinar just so we could talk to everyone. And I think it's honestly the best way to find out about programs. And so I'm glad also that we touched on the endoscopy question because that was going to be something that we were going to bring up as one of the submitted questions. And it's also reassuring to know for me as someone who's going to be going into the same thing soon. One question, moving a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of applications and the actual hepatology match. There were questions about letter writers and whether it would be acceptable for applicants to use letters from non-hepatology faculty. So, for example, a specific example was given of an advanced, someone with a relationship to an advanced endoscopist who maybe they've clinically or in a research capacity worked with. How are those looked upon?
I'll start. I think it's fine. I mean, if that person knows you clinically or from a research perspective or leadership perspective, whatever way you have it, and they know you and you have that great relationship or mentor-mentee relationship and they know you, I think that's totally fine. I mean, I think ideally you want, one or more of your letter writers to be from hepatology. But I think we all understand that not everybody that's coming from a GI program has a hepatologist or strong hepatology a mentor or attending to go to get a letter from. So that I think is okay.
Awesome.
Agreed.
Okay. Anyone that writes a good letter is better than a mediocre letter. That's totally,
Oh yeah, don't make that mistake, please,
yeah.
because
Yes.
I recruit for GI fellowship, and I've definitely seen some very strong names write a paragraph, and you say,
Yeah.
"Oh, strong name, not a great letter."
Ditto. I see it all the time. It actually is, it impacts me negatively. It does.
Yeah, totally. Um, okay, so I think touching a little bit on like how competitive is this and how can people maximize their chances into getting into a top program. I think we just had that webinar about GI fellowship. I think hepatology fellowship's a little bit different. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
So I would start with I think there's about last when I checked maybe about 60 plus positions open across the country, and there was only 22 or so applicants last year, so about like a 30% match rate. That being said, there's definitely programs who recruit internally, so they don't know, so those don't go in
Right.
the into the total number. But for applicants, that is great. I mean, you can go to an amazing program
Hmm.
without issue. So it's, to me, an open market. So that's very exciting, thinking about your dream job. And that allows you to be very selective in where you can go to maximize all of the resources the program has. So it's great for you guys. I mean, it's stressful for me, but great for you guys.
Yeah, I echo the same exact sentiment.
It's very easy to unfortunately over apply. Again, from my personal experiences, I didn't know it was my first time applying for this, and not a lot of people knew about this back, even though it was 3, 4 years ago. And I actually had to retroactive or proactively cancel interviews and really apologize. And I felt so horrible. I had to say, I'm so sorry I'm not able to attend because I felt bad taking a spot from somebody else. And I was like, this is way too many interviews for me. And I'm nothing special about me. It is non-competitive. So think of it this way. This is actually a really good opportunity for you to make sure that you're at a program you're happy. There should be no excuse for you to be at a program and be unhappy. Programs want you to be happy. And I would also push against the concept of competitive program or a top program rather. Honestly, all programs are fantastic. You should like find out a program that's good for you. And if that happens to be a program that's closer by and you'll be happy with your family, I promise you that will carry you much, much further than going somewhere else for a quote unquote top program where you may not be as happy. And it's important to think of the dream job, as Dr. Lucero was saying, because if you want a job closer to where you're living, it actually would be better for you to maybe do a hepatology fellowship closer by because the job process starts quite early. And when you can start making those connections and meeting with people and kind of negotiating what you want with your academic time, it's better to do that locally than coming from far. So for me, I had to do that in Minnesota towards Maryland. And thankfully, I had very strong Maryland ties and I was able to do all of that. But it was a little bit more challenging than if I were in the area. And I had to convince people, no, I want to come back because they're like, well, why did you leave? In a nice way, right? It's you have to make everybody's looking to make sure that you're happy and you're staying at a job long term. So thankfully, or it worked out for me. And I'm happy to talk about the job part separately if anybody is interested. But really, really important to know what you want to do with your academic time, especially if you want to stay in academia.
Yeah, this is an opportunity for you all to find a program that if important for family, location, whatever, that's important. If there's a program where you're like, I really want to work with somebody that I've really, looked up to and get that opportunity to work with them and do research or whatever it may be, that's also the opportunity, right? So kind of unique for you all. And then Bilal, you touched on this, right? It's so fast. You apply, you start, and then 3 months into your transplant fellowship, you're like, cool, so where are you gonna go work? Right? Like where's your next step? So it almost becomes like when you're seeking your transplant hepatology fellowship, you're sort of looking at the job market a little bit too.
Yeah.
And if I on my side ask the question, where do you see yourself in the next, 3 to 5 years, right? It's okay for you to be like, I am looking for a job to stay in this area or do this interest or this niche. Like that's totally okay and sort of feel out what the job market is at that particular program. I think that's fair.
Don't forget GI board certification. Not fun moving somewhere and studying and learning transplant hepatology, studying for your GI boards. Hope you do well, and then interviewing at the same time. A lot of people forget that you're, about to take your GI boards in the fall as well.
Um, it kind of on that vein of if you maybe have somewhere that you definitely want to go, let's say, um, we had some questions about is it okay to reach out to them before the match, try to sign something pre-match? Would people feel comfortable talking a little bit about that?
I don't know. It's I feel like I interview anybody who looks. I mean, I basically interview anybody. I haven't turned an interview away. Have you, Dr. Lucero? Like I haven't turned an
No.
interview
So
away.
there was 22 applicants. We got total, I think 22 in the country. We got 12 applications and I interviewed all of them. Um, I might have gotten an email with applicant saying I'd like to rescind my interview, and that's totally fine. I think the more honest and transparent you are, I welcome that, right? And so, but we're going to offer interviews to everyone because you never know who you got to meet the person to know if you have the shining star.
Exactly.
So we don't turn the only for us, I know there's a question about it. Unfortunately, New York Presbyterian doesn't offer H-1B visas,
Yeah.
so that's where we're limited. But short of that, we interview everyone.
Yeah, we're the same here. Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up.
I'm so happy that we brought that up because a couple of the questions that we got and which I was hoping to bring up next was as a topic near and dear to my heart, like the matter of international medical graduates and if you have a particular way that you deal with that. I think people have asked questions about the H-1B, so I think that's definitely institution specific. I know that here at Mayo they do sponsor H-1Bs, and we have current and prior fellows who have come from abroad, and that's one nice way that they have also been able to kind of ensure that they have enough fellows each year. Um, I guess some of the questions also were asking about, for fellows who are potentially applying from abroad, does research or clinical experience factor in? Have you received any, those types of applications? Thoughts?
Um, so again, we don't accept the H-1B visa, so that makes it a little bit easier for us. We I'm trying to think. I don't remember the last time we had a J1 visa, but we had somebody who applied for an O visa, which is very difficult to get. But that was our fellow 2 years ago. Since we accept J1 visas, we interview all of those applicants. I will say, it comes with a total package. So unfortunately, it does get factored in, and so that's where the interview is key because,
Hmm.
we have to, consider like how much clinical exposure there is and if it's only 1 year. And so that makes it very difficult to rank someone who's done a lot of their clinical training in the United States over someone who hasn't, just because we know that they will be ready to they'll meet the level that we're used to. But that doesn't mean we haven't recruited fellows in the past. So 2 years ago, we had a fellow who is from Korea. She had to adjust, it does play a role. I think definitely if there is a strong research background and research potential, they are weighed more heavily.
And I think ACGME has, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Shah and Dr. Lucero, there's a limit to how much non-clinical time you can have in that 12 months. I remember looking at the ACGME transplant hepatology coursework. You can't have unlimited research and you can't have like unlimited elective time because it's such a short time. They require you to have a certain amount of clinic and clinical time. So it is a very clinically heavy fellowship. So I wouldn't worry about programs in terms of like, oh, am I getting a little more research time than others? Because they're just extrinsically limited by not being able to offer you more, not because they don't want to, it's because it's such a short time.
Okay, I'm gonna veer off a little bit here with one of the questions in the chat. Um, Someone asked, how easy would it be to tailor a practice towards general hepatology in the community with just a Gen GI fellowship and without a transplant hepatology year?
You have to love Mazzled.
You have to have good hepatology training too, I think, at your institution, right? I think that's really big and have to feel pretty comfortable with it. But I mean, I think it's feasible. It's a huge need in the community. It's huge.
You can build a huge practice in obesity. You could get obesity certified.
Hmm.
You could partner with endocrine. You could create a multidisciplinary practice. The sky's the limit. But I think if you have to love Mazzled,
Yeah.
there's just not a lot of autoimmune liver disease, right? And they'll go to the tertiary centers. You could develop a nation addiction in alcohol.
Hmm.
That's on the rise. Depending on where you live, viral hep can be quite prevalent, but the answer is in the steatosis.
And then if you're in a place where, you create a practice and you can sort of link yourself up with the transplant center and create a relationship with them where you're sort of funneling patients up that way that need a transplant. I mean, it's definitely a model that can work, right? Mitch Schiffman does this,
Yeah.
and that's his whole model, and he's doing very well with it. So,
He has. I remember his talks at ASLD and I think lectures also. It's like recordings on one of the other Steinberg or some platform. We actually have a hepatologist who practiced in academia for a long, long time, now works in the community. He's quite senior and really wonderful, without naming names, but he has an excellent relationship with, the transplant centers in our area and is actually able to refer when he needs to, or if he wants to be part of tumor board or any transplant specific things. He actually joins our conferences, which I think is really wonderful and excellent care for his patients in the community. So I think it's just who you know and how you've built that relationship over time, and whether you've learned the hepatology skills to feel comfortable enough to do it in the community.
Most GIs do not like managing liver disease. So if you want to be the cirrhosis person, it might mean you would want to maybe volunteer doing banding call, deal with, you'd want to practice where you can partner with interventional radiology to do your paracenteses. So you really have to think about the multidisciplinary logistics. But yeah, if you're able to craft that, transplant hepatologists love partnering with the local GIs.
Mhm.
I think I've also heard that it can be nice to like manage, if you're really transplant trained, it might be nice to have a community partner in managing immunosuppression like longer term for people who go back, like if they live further away from their transplant center, it can
Mhm.
be really nice to have that local resource is something that I've heard.
Yeah. I,
Um, yeah.
I mean, that's like exactly what we were alluding to earlier, right, Sarah? That I have in the past 4 years, sorry, 6 years, two of our fellows have gone out to the community after completing their transplant year. Both did the 3 year program, and they are both in the community, and so it's really nice to be able to send patients out that way where they can get their immunosuppression managed, or actually just like kind of pre-transplant management, even like just getting that like really just in that pre-transplant management. So that's been really nice to partner with them in the community. But that's something that they knew they wanted to do going into the 3 year program, coming completely full circle to our first question. So yeah.
And Dr. Shah, in your experience, like with those, great fellows who knew that they wanted to go into community practice beforehand, they went through like, the whole fellowship. Um, do you know if the job search was, relatively straightforward for them in finding what they wanted?
They were highly sought after.
Okay, I think that's
I
what everyone
think,
wants to hear.
yeah, they're highly
Okay.
sought after. When you show up and you say, "Hey, I want to take care of liver patients to a community GI practice," they cannot get enough of you. Like they rolled out the red carpet for both of them. And they really, really wanted both of them, and so they got to pick where they wanted to go, and so they prioritized their families, and were able to pick the program that they wanted to go to, or the group that they wanted to go to.
That's awesome to hear. I think the flip side question that we got was for those who want to stay in academia, is there a way that they can stand out or choose their transplant training tailored to kind of their dream job within like an academic center? Or how can they both choose their fellowship, but also use their fellowship to kind of become more marketable in a sense?
I think this is where the nitty-gritty comes in and knowing the how the rotations are built, and then also knowing the faculty
Hmm.
that are there. And so it's thinking ahead and identifying those who you'd want to be potential clinical or research mentors. But you know, I think having the ability to have protected time, elective time or research time, should play a factor if that's what one wants. I think most fellowships do have protected time, but I think that's an important question to the program is what do they do and how do we hold them to that? Yeah. I will say most programs are trying to match, and so most programs will have protected time and sell you that they have the faculty that you need to develop your niche and then make you a competitive applicant for faculty position.
I think, unless more questions come through the chat, we've almost successfully gone through all of the questions that were submitted beforehand. One question that came up, which was from a nice, but perhaps, not the usual applicant who would be interested in these programs, was from a surgical candidate, actually. So I think someone from a surgical background of residency or fellowship was just wondering whether, in your experience, has anyone come through the hepatology fellowship from that background?
Oh, I haven't, but I would love to hear this, Dr. Lucero. We haven't had
Yeah,
one.
Wei Zhang did surgery in China, and then he went through maybe residency and then GI fellowship at Florida, and then he did the transplant year with us, and now he's a transplant hepatologist at Mass General.
Cool.
And so I don't know that you'd probably have to do the GI fellowship to be, board eligible, and then
Hmm.
probably some element of internal medicine training.
Hmm.
But we would welcome them. I guess it would depend on like where they want to practice, right? And if they need to be board eligible or board certified. If you're going to be out in the community, there's definitely a surgeon in New Jersey, I think, who practices a lot of outpatient hepatology. I think transitioned. So, whatever your passion, right? You just, you, and maybe they wanted to go to the other side. The other side is better. Ours are better.
I
Not
just
biased at
remember,
all.
yeah, I just remember Sarah, Dr. Heimbach saying last year, she's like, I used to do liver biopsies and I used to do everything that, there's a dedicated field, not that it didn't exist before, but it was done everything by gastroenterology. And I said, Dr. Heimbach, I think you've done more liver biopsies than I have. She said, we had to do everything, like the consummate surgeon and a fantastic human being she is. But yeah, I mean, I don't personally know of anybody, but it's just amazing how super specialized we've become.
So I'm actually really glad that I asked that because I was worried we wouldn't have time. It sounds like what I'm hearing is it would probably be on a case-by-case basis, and if interested, the party should, reach out both to ASLD/ABIM and then programs.
Hmm.
I'm also hearing the world of hepatology is anyone's oyster. So the time is ripe. Thank you all for being here. We need all of you. And
Mhm.
if any of us can help you along your journey, please reach out. We'll give it a couple more seconds. Any final words from anyone on the panel?
And just a shameless plug, because we are truly here in case anyone has questions or we can facilitate any connections like during the application or otherwise, any questions at all. We're available one email away. Please feel free to reach out to the Liver Fellow Network email. I've dropped that into the chat. And please feel free to subscribe to our newsletter or Twitter if you want to stay up to date on the things that we're working on, all for trainees, basically.
we can connect you to the panelists too if you want to
Definitely.
that way.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to any of you about this process, and look forward to hopefully seeing some of your applications come through.
All right, good luck, everyone.
Good luck. Thank you to the
Take
panelists.
care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.